Hello, my darlings. Mother Raven here. Today I bring you some updated but good old-fashioned feeling science fiction. This one's by GoityePowerhouse, and it's called The Reign of Dracul, Vrooth. Folds of dark purple skin, horrid yellow eyes, fangs protruding from lumpy lips, pterodactyl wings perched on its back. Not a soul on earth could deny the piercing terror they first felt, the surreal image etched on their memory when the unheavenly thing arrived on our soil. That morning of September, from the darkness of outer space. The idea, though absurd, has become almost commonplace now. In this age of social media, of course for most, it was a viral video, or perhaps that famous drone photograph, which turned up on every news feed and was burned into our mental retina forevermore. Our brains being so desensitized to Hollywood mythologies, it took us days or weeks to accept it wasn't CGI, or some elaborate hoax generated by some bored Star Wars production team. Those who weren't game enough to go and see the enormous thing in person, that is. There it was, this monstrous alien thing, straight out of science fiction or fantasy, but with such human mannerisms and calm demeanor, scratching itself thoughtfully as military helicopters filled the sky, orbiting Earth's first known celestial visitor. The humble location was a large factory in suburban Moonsmoth on the fringes of Hexton City, Australia, where it landed or teleported without apparent need for spacecraft. The monstrous being, apparently, claimed his throne before anyone on Earth had woken up, and there he sat, purple skin, almost plastic-looking, his giant and mostly naked body, which stood at hundreds of meters tall, sat calmly upon the brown brick warehouse. His legs, the color of purple grapes, were spread, hanging over the edge of the factory, their muscular forms bulged with tension and external veins. His feet, cracking the pavement with their weight, were clawed like a bat's. His pectoral chest would almost have been human-looking were it not for the orchid color and the black wing-like cape which adorned his underarms. His rhinoceros-like face had the benign and unchallenged expression of a lion. In his right hand he held a decorative golden scepter, as tall as a 4-story block of units. His neck and shoulders were adorned with gold, royal regalia, military cufflinks, medals, and badges. Of course, the human military response had been instant. Before anyone knew what was happening, Donald Trump was tweeting about firing nuclear missiles at Australia and roasting the sucker. Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin also boasted their nuclear arsenals were ready and waiting. Within hours, a military force of 10,000 strong were lining the borders of Hexton City. Tanks, soldiers, drones. A joint American and Australian force coordinated from Pine Gap in the Northern Territory. Then we'd seen what horrors Dracul Vrooth was really capable of. He hadn't even seemed to move from his monstrous urban throne. The effect was instantaneous, though we were all witnessing it from our own small corner of the world. Trump, Putin, the kings and prime ministers from nations all over the globe, hundreds of news anchors. They just melted like candles. We were all watching live as blood, flesh, eyes, mouths, and clothes slurped down into multicolored lumps as though under the heat of some unseen laser. Of course, the event triggered instant panic. Screams could be heard in neighborhoods all over the globe. There were riots in the streets of Brooklyn, Hamburg, Munich, Amsterdam, Myanmar. The military changed tactics, but it was clear the nuclear option wasn't entirely off the table at that point. The generals showed up on TV then, giving their assurance and telling us to remain calm, that measures were underway to communicate with the monstrous thing from beyond. There was feverish excitement as men and women crammed into clubs and bars to watch the event live. Drones and helicopters filmed the armed forces' approach in a respectful parade. The purple beast atop the warehouse made no dramatic movement as the soldiers and generals formed a V-shape communication bunker on the street. Our message, over loudspeaker, was broadcast instantly around the world. "Excuse me, strange creature. We, the people of Earth, do not pose a threat to you. We merely want to ask your reason for coming to our planet." It had been minutes of silence as the frightening thing gazed around the scene with its piercing yellow eyes, brandishing its scepter like a sword, swatting flies, helicopters evading with desperation, before finally its deep, loud voice echoed through the city and over the speakers around the world. The alien syllables had a synthetic or electronic quality.
"Du, ka, qua, ich, me, fra, qua, ka, pung, gu, ka, qua, maha."
We were all stunned, not knowing what to say, slack-jawed and speechless. Then the news reporters cut to Vietnam, where the alien had apparently chosen its vessel. The newsreader was translated into 1,000 languages as she said, "We have a lady here who appears to have been possessed, as a medium of the alien, channeling it. We'll now cut to this humble peasant farmer's daughter who has apparently become the entity's mouthpiece." The footage then transported to a rural Vietnamese barn house. Rice paddies in the background, toiled by men in cone hats. Many reporters and journalists were gathered around a sick-looking Asian woman. Her face had turned lime green, and her eyes were rolling in the back of her head. But she soon began to speak, and her words were also translated instantly to us. "My name is Dracul Vrooth the Fourth. I am of a species far superior to your kind, from the black-eyed galaxy of Kama Barenses. I descend from a royal bloodline. All you on Earth need to know of the Vrooth lineage is how your species intersect with my own. In 35,000 years, humankind is a Type 2 civilization who have begun colonizing the solar system and galaxy beyond. Unfortunately, your arrogant Mars battalion engaged in combat with our species on the borders of our empire, on the planet Rudgar Garin. We have therefore been forced to outflank and stifle your civilization before it begins. So it is that I, Dracul Vrooth the Fourth, have transversed space-time to this period where I shall rule over your species henceforth. Resistance is futile. Only obedience to Zalkin shall result in your survival. You have 24 hours to deactivate your military before I will do so myself. Thus begins my reign. All I can remember for weeks following this communication were constant screams. Everywhere. All around. Gunfire, screams, and explosions. Who knows what the planned military made behind closed doors? The general public was not privy to that. We just saw the aftermath. The burning planes and sunken naval destroyers. Cities firebombed, napalm and blood. Charred corpses and brown fields of skeletons. Then those weird alien spacecraft, shaped like metallic birds, their many textured tectonic shields had begun to land in our atmosphere. Some of the larger stations just orbited our moon and sat in the outer atmosphere. Most of us were too confounded to perceive what was being carried out those days. But it soon became clearer that the extraterrestrials were slowly climatizing Earth to their own comfort levels. Those tampered boomerang-shaped craft started releasing the red powder into the air, and then the temperature dropped, or went weird. Those pockets of psychedelic, star-shaped cloud started bursting, and soon the entire sky was a permanent vermilion color that didn't quite fade when the sun went down. Of course, we all think of the giant dragonflies as the first introduced species. It is unclear whether they were bred here or if the aliens brought them down on their space arcs. But that image stays when you finally knew that Earth no longer belonged to the human species. A red velvet sky, and those hideous, enormous dragonflies swooping around the sky in swarms, blocking out the sun. Other foreign species sort of appeared without discernible origin. One was constantly surprised to see those 100-foot flowers with hyper-colored receptacles and long pollen tubes that swirled around skyscrapers. The Velp frogs and the candle spiders were terrifying additions that one never didn't fear in the back of their minds. If one was brave enough to walk the misty, uninhabitable, and volcanic streets of Earth under its new Tyrannus regime. Horizons of fire and volcanic eruptions abounding. Executions became part of the spectacle. One merely kept one's head down and said nothing when a neighbor disappeared, or the mutilated carcass of a child or pet animal was found on the road. Then, of course, there was the infamous execution parade of Battalion 516. We had become used to our televisions becoming mindless gibberish perpetuated by human clones. We followed the orders texted to us by the probes and made our daily deliveries, not questioning what was happening behind the scenes. But the parade of Battalion 516 stayed with everyone, I think. It was the crushing humanity of it, the universal sense of despair. Evidently, the foreign legions had mastered our technology by then. We were all watching as the live stream cut into the flaming city hall of Hexen. In the burnt-out, many-cratered tarmac, which was once Main Street, a mailbox-shaped spacecraft was lowering the thrust of its jets. Then it slowly docked its landing gear and stopped in the middle of the road, and an immense door bridge was lowered. I can't have been the only one with my jaw lowered as I watched it all on screen, with my mutated dog, the only member of my family still living. Oh, the terror! As those vile insectoid things led an army of 60, 80 humans, futuristic garbed Marines, off the deck. The human Marines had their heads down as they were led down the long stretch towards Dracul. Vrooth's seating place, which had been so altered since his arrival. The purple demon now sat on an alien-textured throne, grown with living technology and red tendrils. His feet were planted on a mound of skulls from a myriad of unknown species. His gold scepter flamed with fire as he proudly addressed his prison population.
Vrooth, Drac, Hiat, Dak, Yamlo, Titikaka, Kilili, Vak, Shu, Vak.
The voice was translated in small course. The aliens had learned to create interpreters in most households they hadn't destroyed by then. Mine was my dog, Sparky. He wasn't anything like he used to be now. So much foreign muscle and those tendrils and weird abdominal bones. The thing that was once my dog lifted its enormously long, fleshy, bloody neck and translated the message for me in a croaky voice. Meanwhile, on the live feed, I could see that the alien sentinels were hammering the Earth Marines from Battalion 516 to wooden crucifixes on Main Street. The men were screaming as they were nailed to the torture devices, particularly one who was dressed in slightly different attire, evidently the leader.
We have captured the pathetic leader of your armed forces. Here are the sole remaining troops of Battalions 516. Pathetic humans, Sparky continued. We have killed billions of your soldiers and eviscerated your Star Destroyers. Now we shall crucify the leader of your armed forces. Do you see what happens to a species who crosses the Zalkin civilization? None shall stand in the wake of flames. We shall torture your species and annihilate your leaders in infinite dimensions until you are nothing but the reckless Neanderthal you evolved from. Watch the future of your species fail and devolve. Feel the pessimism of 1,000 suns burning out. Your solar system is ours.
Of course, they have me working in their communication center now, translating events so that we can fax this warning across other dimensions. My brethren, I implore you, there is no sense in fighting against them. They are too strong, too powerful, too many. I tell you, Dracul Vrooth IV is but one lowly prince. There are millions, billions of these guardians. They are on their way to you now, even as I finish this communication. There is no alternate ending for the human species. Lay down and surrender. Surrender to the Zalkin. So quoth this raven.